I wasn't aware of this phenomenon, if you can call it, until my friends at work told me. A little shout out to Z and Mikey. They told me about something called sleep paralysis.
Oh, I love sleep paralysis. I don't love having it, but I love talking about it.
I didn't know anything about this. I didn't even know this was a thing until I started to talk to more people about it. And funny enough, I spoke to someone about it who wasn't aware and had never even spoken about it, and then said, Sonny, stop. I go through this, and I was too embarrassed to tell anybody, but this actually happens to me.
See, that's a prime example of where I think you can be reassuring to that person.
Yeah.
I mean, just for the benefit of any listeners who don't know what sleep paralysis is, in its most basic form, it is simply what it says on the tin. It's a temporary period of paralysis, typically lasts a few seconds, and it occurs between sleep and wakefulness, either as you're drifting off into sleep or as you're coming out of sleep. And if that's all you get, then you'd probably just think, oh, that was a bit weird. I don't know what that was about, but it maybe wouldn't be too distressing. But it can be associated with other symptoms that can make it absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
And the typical list of symptoms include things like a very strong sense of presence. Even if you can't see or hear anything else, you are sure there is something or someone in the room with you. Typically you're lying there in bed, you can't move, and there's something in there that has evil intentions towards you. But you might actually hallucinate stuff. So you might see lights moving around the room, or dark shadows, or even monstrous figures, demons, old hags, anything that your imagination can dream up. Often there's a sense of pressure on the chest. You have difficulty breathing. You might feel like you've been strangled, or, and intense fear. And, you might say, well, the intense fear is just a perfectly reasonable reaction to all this other stuff.
Sure.
But it's speculated that the amygdala, the part of the brain that deals with the fight or flight mechanism in response to threat, is kind of overly activated during these experiences. So people who've been in genuine life-threatening situations in real life say that the fear they experience during sleep paralysis is orders of magnitude greater than that. It's kind of, really, really the worst thing they've ever experienced. And
so why, Chris?
Well, in terms of, I think we've got the explanation for that one in at least broad brushstroke terms. If you go through a normal night's sleep, then you go about every 90 minutes or so, you go through a particular cycle whereby you first of all go into stage 1 sleep, stage 2 sleep, stage 3 sleep. As you go through these stages, your breathing rate changes, your heart rate changes, your brain waves change in very obviously recognizable ways. And then you come back up through those and you go into what's called REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. And that's the phase of sleep which is typically associated with vivid dreams. And while you're in that state, the muscles of your body are actually paralyzed, presumably to stop you acting out the actions of the dream.
Yeah.
But something goes a little bit skew-whiff during an episode of sleep paralysis, and to put it simply, it's as if your brain wakes up, but your body doesn't.
Okay.
So you can open your eyes, and you can move your eyes. That's one of the few parts of your body that you can move. So you can see you're in your bedroom, you can't move, and you might have all this weird dream imagery coming through into normal waking consciousness. And as I say, the end result can be absolutely terrifying. I get sent lots of first-hand accounts.
Oh, really?
And there's a whole chapter in the book which includes a lot of those first-hand accounts. And these are from people who have decided for themselves that it wasn't real, it was a hallucination, but still reading them, you think, oh my God, that's terrifying, because it feels real while it's happening. And of course, a lot of people have never heard of sleep paralysis. You mentioned you're somebody you spoke to there. And very often when I've done talks and mentioned sleep paralysis, somebody's come up at the end and said precisely that. I've had that experience. I've never told anybody because I thought they would think I was crazy. Yeah. And indeed they might. This is why I want to get the word out there. It's not that it's some kind of paranormal event. It's not demons. It's not ghosts. It's not UFOs. It's not aliens. It's this thing called sleep paralysis. It can be absolutely terrifying, but it is a hallucinatory experience. Okay. And as I say, absolutely fascinating what people can dream up.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Are any certain type of people more susceptible to this? For example, are more religious people susceptible to it?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. No, it doesn't seem to be. One of the really interesting things is looking at the way that different cultures around the world interpret what appears to be the same core experience, because then their kind of wider belief system, including their religious beliefs, will come into play. So, you might kind of experience the particular demons that your religion says exist. See, and you get this interesting thing where there's certain themes that seem to recur quite often, even from people who've never spoken to anybody else about it or heard about it before. The old hag is a really common one. In Newfoundland, they talk about the old hag who comes and sits on the sleeper's chest and tries to throttle them. They call it being hag-ridden. If I want a little bit for Harry Potter fans there.
Nice.
But again, like in Japan, they call it kanashibari. That literally translates as bound by iron. One of my favorites is from St. Lucia, because it's just so creepy. They interpret the same core experience as being the spirits of unbaptized children that crawl onto the sleeper's chest and throttle them. Nice. Back in the Middle Ages, it was the incubus and the succubus. These were sex-crazed demons. The incubus was the male, succubus was the female. They would come and have their wicked way with you while you were asleep, and you couldn't move,
Wow.
And, and there's interesting parallels there then with because sleep paralysis seems to be a factor in UFO abduction experiences.
Yes.
Back in the Middle Ages, the idea was that the succubus would come and have sex with a sleeping male and kind of take the sperm and then transform into the incubus, the male demon, and use that sperm to impregnate demonically some poor helpless female, And now with the UFOs, you've got the same kind of idea that there's this sinister crossbreeding project going on. Yeah.
You got to give it to them. The creativity is amazing.
Absolutely. It is. I mean, it's where these things come from, because it's, on the one hand, you got those kind of common themes, but you also get a huge amount of idiosyncrasy.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my students who suffered from sleep paralysis on a fairly regular basis, he was telling me about one of his experiences where he woke up and there was a black cat by the side of the bed hissing at him. And obviously he couldn't move, so that's pretty creepy in the first place. But it wasn't an ordinary black cat. Instead of an ordinary cat's head, it had an inverted cat's skull.
Oh my
and
God.
Black goo was dripping from the mouth. That if I saw a surrealist painting of that, I think that's somebody who needs treatment.
100%.
And this is a guy who's just an ordinary guy, but it bubbled up from somewhere. And
like for him, this is to your point. I believe these people.
Oh yeah,
I believe they saw what they think they saw.
Yeah, and they're happy to accept that it wasn't real; it was a hallucination. But of course, there'll be loads of other people who won't bother trying to get in touch with a scientist who studies this stuff. They'll go to their local priest or imam or whoever because they will, and often they will end up being told, yes, it was a demon. It was, and maybe even end up having to go through some sort of exorcism route.
Exactly, yeah. When really, instead of an exorcist, all you need was a skeptic.
Exactly, yeah.
To the house.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had my own experience of a paranormal, for example, experience. And it's quite embarrassing because I was the guy that was constantly preaching that none of this is real, none of this is real. So what happened was, in the evening, I went to sleep and somebody pushed past my bed. Mm-hmm. My bed shook. And it was enough for me to get out of bed and say, what was that? Something just happened. So I go up to the landing of the stairs. I have a look around. And then my sister down the hall started screaming. I ran into her room and I said, what's happened? And she said, he's under my bed. As soon as she said that, I thought a burglar. Someone's jumped in the window, my bedroom, and they got under the bed. So I lifted up her bed. Nothing's there. Now, my dad, who was watching TV downstairs with my mom, he came running up the stairs and he said, where is he? What, we heard someone run up the stairs as well. And so we've all congregated now into the kitchen, gone downstairs, and we're all under the assumption that, okay, if we can't see no one here, all the windows are fine, none of the doors are open, it must have been a ghost. We all unilaterally agreed it's a ghost. Now, I don't believe anything. My mom doesn't believe anything. My sister's near here or there. My dad's a true believer.
Right.
And my dad said, it's that ghost. I seen one of these in India. And he started telling us stories. Now, Chris, I don't believe in any of this, but at that moment, I will hold my hand up, Chris. I was convinced to the point where I believe I could even smell sulfur. Now, in like some sort of like I don't know, I watched some movie where they said, oh, a demon smells like sulfur and this. And I was like, can you smell that, guys? Oh, it's very cold all of a sudden. Until I got a text on my phone. And I read the text. It was from a friend who said, oh, did you feel that earthquake?
Oh, nice.
That's all it was. It was a small tremor, but enough to wake me up.
I thought you were going to throw that at me at the end of the story and say, go on, explain that one. And I was going to have to say, oh, well, I don't know what I mean. It might have just, maybe you had sleep paralysis and it was coincidence. but no, you actually got the explanation yourself.
There you go. And like what I can say firsthand, why I've got so much empathy for people that have got these experiences. I always say to them now, I say, I believe you. I truly believe you think you saw what you saw, but I believe there's an alternative explanation.
Yeah. Well, again, very often, just because you can't think of an explanation doesn't mean there isn't one.
Yes.
Again, my kind of favourite example that I'm always trotting out in talks, this goes back to probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. There was a story in the press about a guy who he had a little shed, little workshop where he'd go and he'd tinker about all day. He was very messy. He'd leave all his stuff out on his workbench. He'd lock up, go indoors, go to bed, come back out the next morning, open up, and everything had been put away. And he could not figure out what was going on. This was going on for months. Like a kind of an anti-poltergeist, who kind of tidies up for you rather than chuck stuff around, And in the end, with a neighbour, they thought they were going to get to the bottom of this. They set up a video camera, and it was a little mouse. A little house-proud mouse would appear and just pick all these bits. Sometimes, quite just weighty tools, but drag them all, put them back in his box on his... And again, if a skeptic had put that forward as an explanation, you'd have been laughed at, quite rightly, understandably.
Would not believe that until you saw the footage.
Because we've got the footage. And the footage is on YouTube. You can go away and you'll be able to track that down. So again, I kind of like to show that in the talks because all the audience will go, oh, isn't it cute? But again, just because you cannot think of an explanation does not mean there isn't one. I mean, that was a nice example as well with all the kind of 3 different people, 3 independent witnesses, 100%. All something weird went on.
Yeah.
And yes, it did. Yeah.
So you